We'll call this meeting of April 3rd of the Tecumseh Police Service Board to order. I note the presence of Mayor McNamara and our councillor Rick Tenale. Mark Gomes is here representing the province and as well as Paul Sweet. And I'm the citizen appointment for the town of Tecumseh and Chair Chris Hales. From the Ontario Provincial Police, we have Inspector Angela Ferguson here. We note that we also have our OPP Superintendent Franca Capisi here. And we are waiting for maybe the arrival of Lisa Whitelaw, which will be good. She's our community safety officer. Supporting this meeting also is our secretary, which excuse me, and also our recording secretary is Ellen Preichat. So with regard to the agenda, is there a declaration of anybody that has a pecuniary interest with regard to the agenda for today's meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on. I'm looking for that the agenda for the Police Service Board meeting dated Monday, April the 3rd, as duplicated and delivered to the members be accepted. I'm looking for someone to move it. Mark Gomes and seconded by Paul Sweet. All in favor? Thank you. Passed. Move on to item E, the approval of the previous minutes. So I'm looking at the regular minutes of January 16th Police Service Board meeting as duplicated and delivered by the members thereof be adopted. I've read them. I don't see any problem. Moved by Ricardo Tenale, seconded by Paul Sweet. All in favor? Thank you very much. There are no delegations here, but we do have our Zone 6 representative from the ministry, and we're going to ask you to speak maybe later in the meeting if we can. Okay. So right now we're on to item G, which is our monthly report, and we understand that our inspector will, Angela Ferguson, will make the presentation. Because we have support outside the room, just as you go through, if you just name the page so that we can rotate the screen to support. And I'm assuming we'll be doing February. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will speak to the February report, and I will have some information that I pulled from the previous reports in relation to some comparisons for you. So if we go down to the top calls for service, which is on page 4. Next page. Just down to the next page after that, Tecumseh will be at the top. There we go. So in the month of February, the #1 call for service, as you'll see there, is still property checks. Again, we spoke at the last meeting that this is the proactive work that Staff Sergeant Smith and his team are doing to ensure that our businesses and the properties under development are kept checked and free of any break and enters and any damage. You'll see that there's also traffic enforcement, motor vehicle, traffic complaints, all on there as the top calls for service. Two of the things that I just want to draw your attention to are that alarms are still in the top 10. As you would have remembered from the December report, the #1 call for service in December was 50 alarm checks, and we're still seeing that high 40 alarm checks here in the February report. 911 misdials are also on there. And again, the wires down due to the storm that we incurred back in February as well. If we move on to the total calls for service for February, thank you. So you will see there for Tecumseh that the Tecumseh had an increase, although it's 11% year to date. You'll see that Tecumseh in the February showed a 27% increase. And like I spoke, the 3-year comparison for total calls for service actually showed that Tecumseh was up just slightly and 3% for the entire year. But in looking at February, you'll see that there was that slight increase there. when the rest of the county saw a 13% increase. If we could go down to the violent crime section. Thank you. So for February, there were no change in violent crimes across Essex County overall. However, we'll see that in February, Tecumseh did see that decrease from 12 down to 7 occurrences. And year to date, there is a slight increase that we are seeing in violent crime. And overall, in 2022, if you recall, the violent crime was slightly higher at 11% overall. If we go down to the property crime section, and this is the spot that we are hoping to see that decrease in due to those proactive measures that our officers up in Tecumseh are taking with the property checks, there were only 9 incidents more than there were in 2022 for the February numbers. And in looking at the property crime, 2022 overall saw an increase, a 33% increase, and that's something that we were paying attention to closely here. And in February, there was only that 1.6% increase. Year to date so far in 2023, there is a decrease in property crime, so we're pleased about seeing that. If we go down to the motor vehicle collisions, there was a 28% decrease in motor vehicle collisions February 2023 compared to the 22 numbers. A lot of our collisions are being diverted to our collision reporting center that is over off of Hicks. 50 collisions were diverted this month, 68 in January. And again, we did see an increase in motor vehicles last year in 2022. So we are looking at continuing those efforts here with our collision reporting. There were no motor vehicle fatalities registered in Tecumseh for the month of February. And then if we go down to the impaired and exceeded. Thank you. So you will see me speak to the proactive ride checks at the end of the month here, or at the end of the report here. But Tecumseh did see 7 impaireds, whereas last year we didn't see any, and the year before we only saw the 1. So it does look like quite a considerable increase. And again, that is our officers out there stopping cars and laying those charges for impaired offenses. And directly related to that, you'll see down below is the February ADLS suspensions. 7 of those 9 are the impaired. The other 2, one was stunt driving and one was a 3-day. If we go down to the criminal codes section, just want to make sure that's so there was a 26% increase in criminal code charges in February compared to 2022. Year to date, a slight increase in that of 11%. And when I look at the 5-year comparison, it is trending upwards every year. It is not quite back to the same numbers as we were pre-pandemic in 2019 for the trends, but we are keeping a watchful eye over that. Down below, there are no stats for drug offenses for Tecumseh for the month of February. And then if we transition down to POA charges. Thank you. So there's a 90% increase in provincial offense charges in 2023 compared to 2022. An average of 17 tickets per day, and year to date, there's just that slight increase of provincial offenses that we see there. Below that chart, you do also see the traffic enforcements, specifically in Tecumseh with the stops, the tickets, and the warnings are all there. On average, officers are recording approximately 24 vehicle stops per day this year compared to the 18 that they were stopping in 2022. And we'll go down to mental health. Thank you. So again, as I spoke at the last meeting, this is something that I'm keeping a watchful eye on for all of the county mental health response. However, Tecumseh didn't see a change in our mental health calls for service. You'll see that it's been consistent in the last 3 years there at 11 occurrences per month. But most of the other, with the exception of Kingsville in February, showed an increase. And that is what we are seeing across the board. If you recall back to the December statistics, mental health calls for service are going up. They were 20% higher in 2022 and 55% higher than our pre-pandemic levels. We still have the youth crisis response team and the MCERT that are responding to calls for service with our officers. If you go down to the 911 misdial and hang up. Thank you. So in Tecumseh, we saw 15 this month, which was similar to last month of 14 false alarms. As I said, false alarms are a little bit higher here. They're at 40. In 2022, we saw a 3% increase in our false alarms for Tecumseh. Whereas we saw a considerable decrease in the 911 calls. So we'll just keep a watch on those alarm calls again. Ride checks are there as 11 occurrences for February. There were 17 in January. And the foot patrol hours are also up there at 88 hours of foot patrol for 2023. It says 22 on there, but it's 2023. And our auxiliary hours are there as well. One thing that I'd just like to do is to read to you the Tecumseh notable investigation. Officers did respond to 21 calls for service in February at a local bar, including bail violation, multiple disturbances, assault, LLA. Officers are engaged with a few calls for service, one in which a 43-year-old female was charged with impaired, 36-year-old was charged with refuse, another 36-year-old with obstruct and resist arrest. So there's some concern there that Staff Sergeant Smith is working with our AGCO partners to address those issues, as well as ensuring that all officers are documenting any interactions that they have so that we can bring awareness and engage with the owners of those properties. Aside from any pending questions, that's our report for February.
Well, we thank you. I have some questions. I'm sure there are some from the floor. Your worship, I think I saw you.
Well, yeah. Still COVID mode, I guess, but anyway. I got a couple here. I'll start with a comment. Nice to see the foot patrols up. I think those are that visibility item. I think that's very, very important. The false alarms, I would presume that would be the Oldcastle area more than anything, where we have, I don't know, 300 or 400 tool shops in that area. And I think some of the difficulties we have is to get them to, fix their alarm systems. And that was I think I'd go back, Rico, when you were, on duty and so forth. I think there was a lot of them that were their alarms, but they're false alarms. I would surmise that that's probably no different today than what it was, in the past. But a lot of them is just faulty equipment on some of the tool shops and so forth.
Through you, Mr. Chair, one of the things that we did notice in February and in January was those alarms were a little bit higher because during the storms and the power outages, it activated a few alarms.
Okay.
So we'll keep a watch on it.
All right, Paul, please.
I'm not done yet. I'll go one more. The impaired driving, just a question. If, and I mean, I'm glad they're out there and they're, you know, you're doing your bit. If someone from, it doesn't necessarily mean these individuals right from town, it could be somebody coming through town. But if they were arrested in town, it goes towards like Tecumseh. Am I correct in saying that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
So in other words, if you're impaired, don't drive through Tecumseh.
Your worship.
Well, don't drive, period. For sure. Yeah, for sure. And the one that I think a little concerned, I think it's coming out of COVID. I think, you know, folks are more active and more opportunities in that. But I believe here, like the youth charges are up, and I'm hoping that it's not gonna be an indication where we've had a lot of issues in our parks over the course of, you know, probably the last 2-3 years. A lot of vandalism, you know, tens of thousands of dollars of damage, not only us here, but Lakeshore in particular and other communities as well. And so my question would be, nice to see the foot patrols up. Do you envision come nicer weather in that we'll have officers on bike patrol through our parks?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I mentioned at our last meeting, we have received approval from Region to bring all of our bicycles up to serviceable activity, and we do have a bicycle course planned down here specifically in our area, which will encompass our auxiliary members as well. It gives them an opportunity to get out with us to be trained, and then we should implement that for the summer months here.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Inspector.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm good right now.
Paul, I think you had a question. I know I do too. Please.
Through you,
And
Mr. Chair,
Ricardo.
to the inspector. This notable thing for the liquor thing, like this kind of jumped onto the screen in a big way. Is this a new place, or is it something just happened all of a sudden that's triggered all this? I mean, that's substantive like, to happen in a month. So
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, it is a business that's up here that has been established, and we are going to work with them and with the owners to ensure we went out before St. Patty's Day to make sure that they were aware, and they are willing to work with us, and we are engaging our AGCO partners to help us with that.
great, thank you.
They've got a lot to, I mean, smart service is in force, so they certainly have to look at that. Ricardo, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The alarm registration, do we still do the recording of false alarms and then find those owners? Do we still have that in our perusal for us and you guys?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is an escalation process that I am aware of that is still implemented. It's not administered by the OPP. It's the information we give to the to Tecumseh, and they process that.
Correct. So the question I have is maybe, do we need to increase that fine? Is something council could look at it? You know, like you're saying, you got all these $1 million places down there. And from my experience, it would be, you know, you got 100 employees walking into a building, nobody shuts the alarm off. They all go to work, cops show up and they're all at work. They don't even know what's going on. So maybe some more penalties or higher penalties to the false alarm through the graduated system there. I think that would work very well.
So, Counselor, are you saying that you'd like us to make a recommendation to council?
I would say we should have a
review that?
discussion about it, maybe.
Okay.
If we think that would be a deterrent to help bring down or not.
If I could, Mr. Chair. So that's something that we look at every year at budget time. Councillor Tony, also it's not something that we would necessarily change midstream in the annual budget, but if you want to make that mention at come September when we're doing the draft budget again, we can certainly keep an eye on the statistics up until that time. If you recall, in the 2023 budget, the revenue was split between fire and policing to show better that we've got incidences in both categories that are troublesome and create a lot more work than is necessary.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I will bring that up in budget. Thanks for that suggestion. And if you need help, Inspector, with teaching that bike course, I taught it with the OPP, so I'll volunteer my time. So you can let that instructor know to contact me and I will help them out with that course. That's it for now. Thank you.
Paul, did I see your hand up? Mark, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the inspector, the POA charges. And such an increase from 29 of last year to 97. The 13.7 tickets compared to the 17.8 tickets. Where would that range come from for that being so high? Is it more patrolling, more of our vehicles, are officers out on the road? Or is there something that we're seeing a pattern?
Through you, Mr. Chair, often when we see that crime rates decrease or charges for criminal code offenses, domestics decrease, officers' time is more available to go out and do additional proactive patrols. And again, it's just setting those expectations through Staff Sergeant Smith of the officers out there. So it's a combination of both. If they're not tied up doing 6 hours of paperwork on a domestic, then they have that time to be out there. So as we see certain calls for service decrease, then we're able to see that proactive enforcement go up.
Thank you.
We're good. So my question was with regard to property crime, and through the last summer and part of the fall, we suffered from a lot of thefts in Oldcastle, and I wonder if that's what we're seeing here still, or is this starting to move in towards crime against residences in Tecumseh?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, the increase in thefts against individuals, you mean?
Well, I'm just wondering, we had a lot of activity in Oldcastle that we were trying to deal with people taking things out of the storage yards, the people taking things out of some of the tool shops, et cetera. And I'm wondering if this is still reflected or if we're seeing a change and it's getting to be more of crime against individuals and private property, like home residences.
So to answer that, Mr. Chair, and to the rest of the board, without being able to check on what last year's statistics were like in Oldcastle before I arrived, I'm not sure if I could comment if it's if that shift is changing. I can check with Staff Sergeant Smith unless Constable Whitelaw has any information that she might be able to provide. But certainly we just encourage every member of the public to lock away your valuables. If they're in your vehicle, keep them out of sight, keep them in the homes. If it is transitioning to more property related for persons, it would likely be into the vehicles as opposed to residences from what I've been reviewing.
Okay, I thank you for that. I also noticed, the POA and things like that, and I think there's a focus on traffic in Tecumseh that we're very glad to see. That was in our previous community. What am I looking for? The word I'm looking for, survey. Thank you. That we did. There was real notice on traffic, speeding, et cetera. And I think we're starting to see that. So I'm glad for that. There's a focus on that in Tecumseh. That's one of the things we had that was weighing us down. So before we, is there any other questions? Maybe Superintendent Tecumseh, maybe we could ask you for a few words. You've come all the way from London, so we should hear you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think we're just going to close off. We need a motion to receive the report. So moved by Mayor McNamara, seconded by Mark. All in favor? So moved. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's not a problem. I just want to thank you for having me here today. And I've been in the region for the past 3 years, and it's been a pleasure working with each and every one of you. And I would like to thank Inspector Ferguson for the work that you've done this past year and supporting OPP vision, supporting what you need in Tecumseh. And I also want to say that this will be my last meeting with you. I will be retiring the 24th of May, 2023. That gives me 30 years. And I'm heading back home to Ottawa area. So it's been truly a pleasure. I know that whoever takes my chair, hopefully will continue coming to your meetings so that if you have any questions above and beyond what the inspector provides on a monthly basis, that's what we're here for, and put a name on a face. So hopefully that's been viable for you to have a superintendent come down and give you the opportunity for any kind of questions that you've got.
Well, we certainly thank you, and I'm sorry to hear that, because we were starting to get a little bit of a liaison going at the that's with the region. That's very good. Mayor McNamara, you said you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. First and foremost, I want to thank you in particular for I'd say attending a not so nice meeting a while back and so forth. And for your leadership and certainly extended to the chief superintendent as well. And very pleased. And something must be working right, because I know our customer satisfaction survey is roughly a 20-point bump up in terms of the policing. Nice to see it back in the 90s. So you're back in the A+ area, which is quite nice. But I mean, we've never had, difficulties with obviously the rank and file folks that were here. But I want to thank you for your leadership and that, and certainly the inspector. A big upswing in a short period of time. So it is reflective, because in the traffic piece, as the chair had alluded to, was, for us, the lay people that are out in the street, that's policing. All the other stuff, the big stuff, and that we're not aware of that. And quite frankly, we don't want to be. You do that so well, as a professional police service. But the to have the officers out there, the foot patrols, the cycling, and in the traffic is where they really notice it, and so forth. So the POAs are up, and I can see why, in that regards, and so that's good news, and folks see that, and I think that's the community-based policing that we want to see, and that's what our citizens want to see. So we want to thank the inspector and certainly Sergeant Smith and our local officers as well, who are delivering that service for us on a daily basis. We really, on behalf of the citizens, appreciate that very much so. And so on the other hand, I concur with the chair. We're sorry to see you go. We just got to know you, but understand, and the 30 years of service and so forth. I mean, my father-in-law retired from the OPP at 30 years, and he said it was time to move on to other things and so forth. And I have a brother-in-law who retired 32 years in the RCMP, and certainly it's a tough business. It really is, and so we're very appreciative of your service, and we want to thank you for your service and wish you all the best on behalf of us and the citizens in the town here. A healthy, and you're going back to my home area. So we wish you well. You sure you don't want to stay here? The weather's much better.
Well, and I was just about to comment about that. We still have lots of snow back home, and here, every time I take a drive down, I tell the inspector each and every time that I just thoroughly enjoy coming down. But I must say thank you for your kind words. But if it's not the work that we do collaboratively, I don't think you'd have the results that you do with the increase in the survey. So thank you for supporting us.
Well, thank you. And before we leave this, I think it's important that we can maybe have an introduction for our new community safety officer, and maybe a few words from her.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will take a minute to brag about Constable Lisa Whitelaw. She is one of the first people that I met and my family met when we came here to Essex County. She has a very, very strong passion towards community service work and engaging with our members of Tecumseh. So we're very, very happy to have her here with us. She just came last week, essentially, and she is going to pair up with our other community services officer, and they're going to tackle all things events this summer. So I will let her speak if she would like to for a second here.
Good evening. Sorry I was late. I was at a meeting. Do you want an introduction a little bit about myself? Okay, so I born and raised in Tecumseh my whole life. My career actually started with the town of Tecumseh back about 26 years ago. I was a summer student. I had a great opportunity with that, and it evolved into working for the OPP in the office, part-time to full-time. I was an auxiliary member for 3.5 years while I was a civilian, and then I jumped over to uniform member, and I was patrol for 18 years, Tecumseh and Lakeshore. And then I just took this opportunity to do the community service officer for Tecumseh and Lakeshore. So I'll be what they refer to as the north end of Essex County. And again, with Catherine, we'll be kind of teaming up and helping each other balance everything. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. I've got a question. So there has been some talk, through COVID, there was restriction for police officers going into schools, et cetera. And I think we're a little bit left in the dark as to how that's settled out. Do all boards, are you welcome with all boards? Are you welcome grade school, high school, or is the VIP program going to start rolling in? It's kind of, that we could have a little report on that maybe.
Sure. So from my understanding, the public boards are not having police officers in their school system at the moment. They are doing some research and some evaluations to see if they will bring policing back in the VIP program and how that'll run and if it'll run. The French board and the Catholic board are allowing officers in to continue with VIP, or whether it's just a safety talk of some sort. And we're just kind of balancing that out. Some of it, from my understanding with Catherine, is they contact us. We're not exactly like selling it or going and trying to, force our way in. The schools individually kind of reach out to us, and then we start the program, and it's 6 to 10 1-hour sessions of a variety of topics for the grade 6 students. A lot of them are doing grade 6, 7, and 8s. Because a lot of the COVID, they missed it. So they're kind of incorporating it. So they do get a little value out of it. So they don't totally miss it. So it's quite busy. And I'm learning quickly. It is quite busy just with the schools and all the meetings. But to the mayor's point, or the chair, or I'm not sure what to call you at this point. The visibility in the town, I still want to take that on. I still want to do a lot of the school bus times and focus on the schools on the outside as well, not just the inside. Because I know with this town and Lakeshore, I'd worked Lakeshore for 11 years as well, patrol. It's a huge, constant, complaint driven topic that I think I'm hoping I'll be able to tackle, and kind of each week I usually pick a different school and try to focus on the safety aspect there. So.
Well, we thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, please, Ricardo.
Just to welcome Lisa, Inspector. You picked the right person. I've known Lisa her whole career, and plus when she was here at the town. And I was a big proponent of community policing. I was from St. Clair Beach. We didn't have much crime, so we did community policing. And I followed that forward when we amalgamated, and I think Lisa's gonna do a great job. One of the biggest issues we have in this community is that connection with the police. I do believe if a youth is connected to a police officer through a friendship or wherever, they might not commit a certain crime, different things like that. So I think it's important that our officers know the kids and the kids know our officers. So looking forward to this part of policing in Tecumseh. Good job.
Your worship.
Thank you very much through you. But well, Lisa, I've known Lisa for a lot of years, and she was my neighbor for a few years, and a little bit of humor in the stories of their kids when they were really small, and that they thought it was pretty neat that they lived next door to the mayor, and I thought it was pretty neat that I lived next door to a police officer, because it made the street that much safer. But when I used to back out of my driveway, and that her son in particular used to stand by and right by the driveway and salute as I'm going out and so forth. So I always got a charge out of that. So I don't know if he remembers that or not, and then when he walked by my house, and he's telling all his friends, that the mayor lives here and so forth. So it was quite well, it was humorous, but it was a nice thing. And so you had like I said, I had a great neighbor, so I've known Lisa and I think what's important too, especially on a community officer, you know, when you got roots in the community a little bit, and I know Rico or Counselor Antonio was a community officer as well. You get to know the kids and they get to know you. And then it builds that rapport with police officers that they're here for the good, the greater good of the community, and they can go to the police officers. They can talk to them. They can be guided by them. And so I am really, really happy to see, you know, the reintroduction of the community police officer. I think it's a critical piece to the Community Policing Safety Act that's coming out. And that officer is going to play a major role in you know, in the community as a whole. So congrats for taking the position. Congrats for assigning her to the position, and looking forward to working with you, and especially in September when we have our fire safety week and we have police officers in, and we miss that part of the community police officer in that area. So looking forward to continuing to work with you, Lisa, and for our community. So thank you for taking on that responsibility.
Well, thank you. I missed it too.
Just as a final thing, so there's two things to think about. One is, I know in high school, students have a chance to talk to police officers about careers in policing. That can't hurt you. The other thing is, you spoke about the presence, people getting the presence of the policing in town. I can tell you, I got a phone call last week because there was a whole bunch of police cars downtown Stony Point at a grade school. And the people called up, my brother-in-law's French, and he called up and he said, "What's going on? Is there some?" I said, "It's probably a VIP program or something, but let me." So it happens that his son is actually superintendent of French education. And he said, "Dad, it was a VIP program," you know, so you're noticed for sure. There you go. Okay. Sorry, we move on to item H, traffic radar survey. I read it. I was quite surprised at the median speeds and things, but I don't think there's any comment we need. We just need a motion that the report be received. So moved by Paul and seconded by Ricardo. All in favor? Thank you. Passed. Communications action required. There are none. Communications for information purposes. Item J. I have a letter out, and I thank Margaret and Ellen for assisting on that big time with regard to bail reform. I noted that also that the same time we had a meeting with a member of Parliament and whose name I have got, and I don't think saw bail reform in Gary. You know this gentleman. Maybe you could pronounce that name.
It's difficult. My name is parliamentary assistant to the Attorney General of Canada. And it's got a first name, Gary. That's an easy one to remember. Anand Dan Sang Gary. So very long name and so forth. But it was a great meeting. With the gentleman. So
Actually, we made our feelings known about early bail and you know, all these remands that are, you know, just uncontrolled anyway. Now, under new business, I'm sorry, again, under communications, we also got a letter from the Solicitor General noting that we have a new appointment for Ryan Teschner, who will be our new Inspector General. So I'm looking for that this motion, this correspondence from items 1 and 2 be received. Ricardo is seconded by Mark. All in favor? And received. Thank you. Under old business, there is no old business. Under new business, we have Ron Leclerc, who's patiently waited this whole meeting. So Ron, if we could have you please maybe make some comments on us. And I think we would have a few questions for you as well. Thank you.
Certainly. So I think I'll start by just introducing myself so you know where I come from and my background in the policing landscape. I'm an Essex County person, born and raised in the town of LaSalle. I went to the University of Windsor. I studied political science and public administration, accepted a position with the Windsor Police, worked for them for 30 and a half years, retired as an inspector. Worked in just about every division except for traffic and drugs, major crimes, criminal intelligence. I did some special projects, two of which are notable. One was the process of providing contracted service to the town of Amherstburg. I did all the RFP response. And then once the RFP was rewarded or awarded to the Windsor Police, I did all the governance work to transition the officers, but also the administrative side. I also wrote a document regarding digital evidence management about 10 years ago. And that was actually the basis that the province used for their provincial acquisition for digital evidence management. Not my entire document word for word, but they certainly used quite a bit of it. So that's my background. Locally, I'm also a school board trustee for the public board. So I can't really comment about the policing situation. Glad to have a conversation when I put that hat on, if you'd like. But I'm also a director with the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. So I keep busy in the community locally. So my role is quite simple. I think, Mr. Sweet, you have some experience with this role. I'm a support service. I'm here to provide support to your board. If something comes up that you're not sure how to handle, I'm the person that you can reach out to, and I will do my best to navigate through that for you. I'm a conduit to the province, so if there's information that you need from the Solicitor General, I'm the person that can get that for you. I've worked with Inspector Ferguson several times since she arrived. I actually started Zone 6 in September. I was Zone 4 prior to that. So I bring a lot of experience from governance perspective and also from a police perspective. Like, you have lots of policing experience on this board though. So yeah, that's essentially what my role is. If you please send me your meeting invites and agendas, I will always let you know in advance if I'm attending. I'm not going to surprise you. I'm here as an advisor. I do have a monitoring role, but from my perspective, if I'm strong and I assist with the advisory role, we don't have to worry about monitoring whatsoever, right? So that's where we're at. Certainly willing to entertain any questions.
Well, are there any? I certainly have at least one or two. So our association, the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, has just put out a document that's pretty thorough in their aims for training boards under the new act. And I know the ministry wants to do training as well. Do you see these things as loggerheads to each other, or do you see our board, which I think they're aiming at, is assisting with the creation of business plans, governance metrics, and performance review and things like that, as opposed to the requirements of the Ontario, well, all the things under our municipal act?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to remind everybody that April 25th, we are providing a training session. Everybody from this board, I believe, has been invited. It's in Essex. Essex was the first board that I met. Essex was the first OPP board that I met with when I first came on here, and they graciously offered to host that. And I said, that would be wonderful. So I really encourage you, if you're available on April 25th, to come to that. To go to your question, do I think the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards plans and the ministry's plans for training are at loggerheads? I don't. I believe that there's already ongoing discussions between the association and the inspector of policing as to how the training will be rolled out. The act does call for ministry mandated training, so we will be providing that. But obviously, your association can provide so much more support that beyond what the ministry mandated training is going to be, right? One of the things we have to be careful of is that nobody said that here, and I applaud the mayor for actually referring to the correct act. There's been a lot of confusion across the province. Oftentimes chiefs will refer to the Comprehensive Police Services Act. That is a non-starter that doesn't exist anymore. So any discussions or any agendas that include discussions on the Comprehensive Policing Act, that's an old act. It's fallen by the wayside. It's the Community Safety and Policing Act. And, you know, the training will come, and, you know, the inspector of policing is a support mechanism to assist with boards, but the associations of boards, the associations of chiefs of police.
Okay, so, and I appreciate that. We have an obligation to do an annual review, a performance review of our detachment commander. Over the years, that has been written under in response to what was in the Old Police Services Act. Now, we haven't rolled out all the regulations under the new act, but we are under an obligation, as in fact, starting this month, to create our performance review. So are we still within our rights to use the old forms that we had developed that was supported by the act?
Yeah, certainly the Police Services Act remains the act of supremacy at the moment. We're not anticipating the CSPA to remove or take supremacy over the Police Services Act until either December or January of 2024. So at this point, you have to do it under the Police Services Act. There's a lot of regulations that are still outstanding and subject to change. The act itself is still subject to some changes.
So I hate to be the mouthpiece here, but I again, do you have any idea for us? The biggest thing that our council, all the councils in this county are going to have to deal with, and we boards are going to have to deal with, is a way to create a detachment-based board system. We have proposed to the province, two basically a north half of the county board and a south half of the county board, which will entail a lot of changes to bylaws, the creation of new bylaws, the creation of a funding system. Just astounding. Do you have any idea of when we're going to get a chance to look at that so we can start the process?
So it's my understanding that if there was an issue with the proposal, and this nothing's guaranteed, right? If there was an issue with the proposal, you would have heard something probably by now. Again, I can't make any promises that that's correct, right?
Well, and Margaret, I see.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can just follow up on that. My understanding was that the ministry was sort of delaying responding back to us because they were undertaking Indigenous consultations. And that I believe we heard last November or thereabouts. So just wondering if there's an update on whether that process has been completed and when we might get word on the detachment board structure for Essex.
So I wish I could give you more clarity than I can. Unfortunately, sometimes the information doesn't trickle down as quickly as we'd like. Yes, you're correct. That Indigenous consultation process was going on. Again, the information I have is that unless you've been specifically contacted, there's an anticipation that there is no issues with your current, of course, subject to consultations or subject to provincial changes that wish to come about. So I know that's about as clear as mud. I apologize for that, but once I do, if I hear any more, I'm more than willing to share it, but we get very limited information. It trickles out very slowly, but our goal is to action by December, January.
If I could just follow up with one additional question then. We run on our fiscal year is the annual year, right? So we run January to December. So it would be whatever influence you might be able to bring to bear to the timing of this conversion to detachment board. It'd be ideal if they could give us some kind of indication in September of the transition, especially if it's going to occur in 2024, so that we can start to prepare. Otherwise, we end up with a status quo budget because we don't have any information to deviate from that.
No, understood. So what I will do tomorrow is part of my process is I report back of any questions that I may have received. I will action that to my supervisor. Again, whether or not that sparks any response above her is a good question. I will say that we're pretty confident that we're going to be up in action by December, January. The new Inspector General, Mr. Teschner, has a considerable history in actually writing the Community Safety and Policing Act. So he has a deep fundamental understanding. So any issues that we've encountered where we're like, what was in the intent here? He's going to be able to assist us a lot with that. And he's got significant experience, worked on the Morton report in Toronto. He comes from the Toronto Police Services Board. That was his last position as the administrator of that. So a lot of experience in the policing sector, and he's a lawyer.
Are there any other questions? Just the reason that this board is very, very interested in the launch of the detachment system is we were the board who sponsored the original discussions among all 5 contract municipalities here. And when you look at it deeply, each contract municipality has a lot of work they have to do on their own bylaw systems in order to decide how they want to move people into a detachment board as far as representation, who they're going to have, and how they're going to satisfy the mandate of the new act, which calls for diversity, calls for the boards. How we're going to do that, I don't know, with the limited number of people because they want to cut the size of the boards down, but we have to have boards that represent our citizenry, our communities, and that's Lakeshore, Tecumseh, and Essex possibly. So that there's a lot of things that council needs to do. I mean, we serve at council's like pleasure, so we can make recommendations of what we think should happen, but there's got to be a lot of thinking going on. So the earlier we get an idea of what is required of us, the quicker this is going to come to some fruition.
I totally agree with you.
Well, then we'll leave it at that. I think we beat that into the ground. Yes, stay tuned. Yes. Now, spinning out of that is the next item in our new business is the 2022 performance review. We have a form. It was supported by the current Police Services Act. Ricardo, you're the first year doing this, so just the way it's done is we're going to hand this form out to everyone here so yourself and all of us to be filled out independently with your own thoughts. I'll take all that together and I will somehow collate, because it's not a system where there's a number, like a 4 out of 5 or a 5.5, 5 out of 10 or whatever. It's your thought process. And I'm gonna try to bring that together, that it represents the thoughts of the entire police service board. Having done that, then I think we will meet again, because we want to make absolutely certain that everybody is on board with our collated report. And then we will present it to our detachment commander, and then it'll go up to London after that. So the presentation of the detachment commander, all members of the board are invited to participate. Sometimes it's a little bit onerous for people to get during the day to get together, but we'll certainly do that. We have a little disadvantage in the fact that we're all new to you and you're new to us. We have, I think we've had a good experience it was certainly a very, very different and refreshing experience. I'll be honest with that over this last while. And so I think I anticipate, a good report and a good discussion to flow out of that. That's probably the big thing that we always looked forward to, was the discussion that flows out of the report. So Ellen, I think you have the forms ready. I would suspect we're pretty close. Okay, so that will be something, and we'll get it together, and I'll put a timeline to that. I find if we don't put timelines to things, things don't get done. So we'll put a timeline to that. And that concludes new business. Please, yes, please.
Mr. Chair, you've alluded to it, as has the mayor, but just to put a little finer point on it, we recently completed the 2023 Citizen Satisfaction Survey in Tecumseh. Right, very fresh. The interviews were conducted over a 2-week period in March, and pleased to relay some of the results. There are many, but the ones most, I think, germane to this board's discussions is that the rating of the town of Tecumseh as a safe place to live scored 94% in good rating. So that, I think, is a vote of confidence in the people that we rely on to keep us safe. And similarly, as the mayor alluded to, with respect to importance of services provided by the town of Tecumseh, policing scored a 91% in terms of their importance overall, which is in the top, certainly within the top 10. With respect to issues that were identified, and people were only allowed to identify one issue, traffic is still coming up as a bit of a concern. So, as has been made clear today, we're certainly appreciative of the efforts that Staff Sergeant Smith has put into working through that with our town staff, and I think that's showing some good results as well. So that's not the only one that made it into the top few concerns. So, but I think as a whole, certainly much better than the last survey a couple of years ago.
Your worship, I think you wanted a final word.
Yeah. Well, just basically on spring is coming, and obviously for some reason, people get a little dazed, and so, the whole traffic issue and that County Road 22 still sometimes it's a freeway in many ways, but also that maybe if we go back to, I think last fall, maybe Lisa, you were probably involved in it at that time, when you had a coordinated effort with Windsor Police, LaSalle, OPP. I mean, we saw OPP vehicles down in Windsor. We saw them down here. I've never seen such a busy campaign. And I'll tell you, it was like picking cherries, really. I mean, they were incredible. So, and it really dampened folks for a while, not forever, but for a while. People were behaving and so forth. So I don't know if that can be done again or repeated, but I think that'd be certainly a wonderful opportunity. The other as well is that spring comes, and then so does opportunities, crying for opportunities. People are working in their yards, the garage doors are open, and so forth. Maybe something with our communications department, and maybe with the OPP's community, maybe some release, just to tell folks like, okay, don't be so lackadaisical, but I'm just saying, just be aware of your business around your home and so forth. Just lock it or lose it, and make sure your garage doors are down, so forth. Just some safety features, just to remind folks, because you always see kind of an uptick, and when the weather gets, more people are outside, and then the more visibility of opportunities. So maybe something we can coordinate between our McKenzie and certainly I think it's PC Duguay, who's the communications officer. Just kind of a reminder, some safety tips.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're at that point of the meeting when we're going to talk about our next meeting. I would like to say that in the interim, we've got our annual general meeting and our spring conference for the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards. I suspect the ministry will be there in force, because I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of OPP policing in Ontario, and we've got a lot of representation is going to show up asking very similar questions to the one that I asked. Before we go, I want to tell you that I think I speak on behalf of our board. It is really refreshing to see the presence from OPP staff here. Okay, we felt for a couple of years we were in the wastelands, so this is very good. So you're not going to find a community anywhere in Ontario that supports the Ontario Provincial Police more than Tecumseh. I think this is the longest standing contract in Ontario. So we believe in the OPP, and we're very glad that you believe in us and you've shown up here today. So we thank you for that. I'd like to say that before we leave, that our next meeting is scheduled for June the 26th. And is there, and yes,
What day is that?
that's June the 26th.
No,
Like right off the top of my head.
I got vacation, so I'm gonna be out west.
Yeah, so just before the 27th.
27th.
Ba-dum-bum.
Is it a Monday or Tuesday?
It's a Monday. It's a Monday.
Gotta check my.
Is this all of council or like, are we gonna lose, just,
I don't know.
We can-
I might be okay. I should be okay. Got a great memory, but sometimes it's a bit short.
I understand.
26. Vacation. 27. No, I'm gone for 10 days from the 19th, 16th down.
While our mayor's checking his council, I wonder if you want to put a plug in for Cops for Kids golf tournament. You've got. Oh, you don't know when you're on. Oh, look at this. No, please. I mean, if we're live streamed right now, there may be people who we can be listening in. Yeah, just turn your mic on and you can make it.
So the OPP is hosting a charity golf tournament on July the 12th. It's a Wednesday. It's at the Kingsville Golf and Country Club. Ticket sales are open now. All charities go back into the community at OPP community for kids. Bursaries for high schools, camps, and helping families at Christmas time, things like that is where the funds all typically go. So if anyone's interested, it's open to the public. It's not an internal tournament.
And you can tell everybody where to get the tickets. That's the big thing. I go every year, but I think it would be good for you to tell them where they get their tickets.
You can contact any OPP detachment and they'll get you in touch with anyone that would have the tickets available and sign you up.
Any other business? Seeing no other business, then I would ask that this meeting of our board be adjourned. And ask for a mover. Paul, seconded by Ricardo, all in favor? Done. Thank you.